Welcome back to another episode of Sophia the 380 SL. Today's episode is actually pretty exciting because it's something that took me hours and hours and hours of work to figure out. So I want to put this video together so that way it's just easier for the next guy. It's just, if you follow the steps along, you'll be able to figure it out in like half an hour versus hours of me trying to figure it out. And also a big shout out for Don here in the local Mercedes group, who's an electrical engineer, which came in really handy when we were trying to figure out some of these diagrams, and really helped me out. Trying to figure out this temperature issue. As you know, I've been kind of chasing down this temperature issue for some time. My car is always at around 100, 95, 100, 105. And it kind of, let me show you this, it looked like this. Want to give a quick recap what I've done so far in order to bring this temperature down. I have changed the coolant out. That needed to be changed anyway. I know I did this on this channel, so I changed that to the blue coolant. And then I also changed the thermostat. That was done by a mechanic. That was old and needed to be done. The mechanic also changed out the water pump because that was leaking and had to be replaced. On this channel, I've played around with this fan clutch. It seemed that helped the temperature a little bit, so that was great as well. But the temperature continued to be at 100. So the best thing you could do, I had all the stuff I had to change out anyway, so I don't regret changing all these things. But if you're getting an incorrect temp reading, you may want to grab a temp gun just to confirm that. So grab a temp gun. This is a sophisticated one that I borrowed from my brother-in-law. You just need a cheapo one. You can probably get one at Harbor Freight. But get your temp gun, look at your gauge, and then check the reading that you have on this thermostat housing. So this is where the sensor is, and this is the one that goes straight to your gauge. And then just check it. So check it here. You can check it on this coolant line, but this one, on this radiator hose, but it's gonna be not as hot as it should. So this always runs a little cooler, but this is where your sensor is inside of this metal casing. So check that and see if it's accurate compared to your gauge. Let's do that now. Okay, in the engine bay, looks like, again, you guys saw the readings that I was getting about 100. If I do the thermostat housing, I'm getting 87, 82, 81. It's thermostat. This is the radiator hose up top, getting 80, 79, 78. Engine, just throw it on the engine there. Let's see, that's 74, 73. Other side. Getting 73, 72. And then if I do the radiator, just go around to the radiator between the fan blades. Okay, I got 80 on one side. Let's do a little more. I got 72, 83, 85 on the radiator. Let's do one more side of the radiator. Got 83. 84. I don't see anything that says 100. Everything's around 80. So as you can tell, the temperature gauge is completely wrong, which is good because now I know my car is running at optimal temperatures. It's just the gauge is totally wrong. So I need to go back into the instrument cluster and get that corrected, get that fixed, and we're gonna get back there and do this fix. While I was making this video, also the temperature gauge just completely lost its mind and started going up and down just randomly. Here's the video of that. I'm gonna go and show it to you right now. And then, but after that, let's go into the car and fix this issue. I move forward with this, you do need some wire that you're going to need for grounding purposes. At first I got this really thin solid wire, and that's not going to work. It's hard to see. You are going to need this threaded 18 gauge wire. It's a little hard to see. Let's see if it'll focus. Anyway, it's threaded 18 gauge. That's what you need in order to ground this. So you're going to need probably like a 2-3 foot section. I got this from an old extension cord. I just pulled it out. It comes with 3 different lines, right? Your ground and your positive, negative. It doesn't matter, but just get one of the positives or negatives. You can go ahead and use that. Typically they're 18 gauge and they're threaded. So this is what you'll need. All right, now here in the car behind this instrument cluster, I'm not gonna get into the steering wheel removal or the cluster removal because that was done on the last episode. But here what I wanna do is show you the wiring that I added to ground the instrument cluster. So grounding means is that you take an added wire, and that's like the wire we just talked about, the 18 gauge wire, and you ground this back of this instrument cluster so that way it gets a proper ground because the ground was lost at some point, or it's not getting enough ground. So the back of this wire is attached to the chassis. Let me show you where that is. I ended up putting it right into that bolt. That's to ground it. And then on this side here, there's 3 different instruments that are part of this instrument cluster. There's this one here in the middle, and then there's one here all the way to the right. So in order to make sure they all get proper ground, so this entire metal is grounded, and you can attach it to this bolt if you want. And then there's a raw metal strip that goes through here, and that passes the ground over to the other side. What I did is I took this wire, because really my biggest problem is this instrument cluster right here, all the way to the left. Well, when you're looking at the car, it's to the left. I added it to this bolt right here. I'll show you here. To this bolt, so that way this gets grounded. There's metal behind that, so that way this board is grounded correctly. I added an extra ground, which is this white, that grounds it from this bolt to this bolt. So just in case if this metal is losing connection for some sort, I've already added an extra ground to prevent any issues from happening in the future. So again, the grounding is going from one side of the chassis to this one bolt right here. And then I added this white wire, which is connecting this bolt to add extra ground to the rest of the instrument cluster, just in case if it's needed in the future. Now that I added this ground onto here, I did put the car back, and the temperature was actually a little bit more accurate. So that really helped out. But the needle moving was still an issue of it bouncing around back and forth. That continues to be an issue. And so that wasn't due to grounding. The grounding helped the temperature gauge itself just to get a more accurate reading. But it was an actual connection on the positive end, and which ends up being this giant pin right here. This one here, you can pull that out. It's a big circle that has a bunch of pins in it, and all that was corroded. So I pulled that out, and I used some electrical cleaner to clean that, and some sandpaper to clean inside all the connections before I reconnected it back together. So that way the metals were touching appropriately in order to prevent the needles from bouncing. And this doesn't also help just the temperature gauge. This will also help out with the fuel gauge as well, because I noticed my fuel gauge has been more accurate since then. Now here's the electronic cleaner I use, this QD electronic cleaner that I got from the auto parts store. Pretty much it cleans out any kind of electrical components that have corrosion on them and just needs to be cleaned with any kind of debris. So when I pulled off this guy right here, is a giant pin, 16 pins, go ahead and spray some of the electronic cleaner in there, and then use pipe cleaners or sandpaper to clean off all the debris, so that way it makes a good connection. Now since you're back here anyway and you've got this instrument cluster out, what you can do is you can go ahead and check for any bulbs that are out and repair any bulbs. These are super easy. If you need a bulb replaced, you can just pull on these, just kind of twist a little bit, and they come off. These white plastic pieces, you can keep the wire on, it's just the white plastic comes off, and you can replace the bulb and put it back in. Also on this side, what you can do is remove this entire instrument cluster from the plastic, and you can clean the inside. So you can clean the glass, this plastic piece on the other side, and you can clean the needles, you can clean the plastic back there. It really made a huge difference once I've done it. Another thing you can do is, if this bothers you, which doesn't really bother me, but you can tell this is yellow and this is a little orange on the needles themselves, at the hobby store you can get some coloring, and then that way you can paint them all, and that way you can get one uniform color, or if they're white or peeling or chipping, you can go ahead and paint it all in. Now since I have this out of my junker car, I figured I'll just go ahead and show you right here. So if you flip this over, like so, this is what you're trying to ground. This is the grounding station. So you can sand that down a little bit, you can add the wire to it. That's the area that I added the wire, because that is your main ground, that right there. And then right off here is your other bar that goes to the middle instrument cluster. After that, it goes to your third one, but this is the one that we're obviously trying to fix. So make sure this part right here is grounded correctly. This is the pin that you want to clean up. You can use that electrical cleaner, clean these heads off with a little bit of sandpaper, and then the connector that goes into here, clean that off as well. So what I did is I sprayed this side, cleaned them up. On the other side on the pin, sprayed that, and I went into each hole. You can use a pipe cleaner. I used a little bit of sandpaper, rolled it up really small and tight, and then went into each hole to make sure that's all nice and clean. And then connected everything back together. And then here's, so just to show you, this is how easy it is to just change the bulb. Just pull on it, just turn it. Oh, nope, it came off. There it is. So this one's actually missing a bulb, but this is what it looks like. So I took care of all the wiring inside the dashboard, but I'm still having a little bit of a problem. So I came over here to look at this connection here. It seems like this is a little loose. And then I also cleaned it really well with the same thing with the electrical cleaner, and then with a little bit of a brush inside, because I think I have a little bit of corrosion in there. And I think this is gonna fix the problem. I'm gonna go ahead and open this up. See, there's some clamps here on the left side and the right side, because I really wanna make sure, maybe I wanna tighten the inside of it, inside metal, so that way when I push this in, it really holds on. It's pretty loose, even when I push it in, it seems like it's pretty easy to come off. And I'm still getting, it's still a whole lot better, but I'm still getting some of the bouncing that's going on with the gauge. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that up. So here it is. I took it out of the plastic housing. I'm gonna go ahead and clean it some more. It looks a little bit more, looks a little corroded there still. And then I'm gonna clamp down on it, so that way when I attach it to the sensor, it's pretty tight and doesn't move around. I noticed that it does that, a little bit more of the bouncing when I go over bumps or when I'm going a little faster. So I'm gonna do that now, and I'm gonna put it back together and then reattach it to this sensor. I got this guy all nice and clean. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So when I put it over this, look how easy it moves in and out. I don't think that's normal. It's super easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and clamp down on it with some pliers and get it nice and tight. All right, let's check this temperature gauge out. Perfect. Right there between 80 and the 100, right? So that's 90, call it 90, a little bit less than 90. I'm gonna go over to the car. Seven. 81, 3, 4. Perfect. Temperature's running great. I'm about to catch a freeway here. It's so nice having gauges that are actually accurate, gauges that are not bouncing. It also fixed the fuel gauge. The fuel gauge was bouncing a little bit, but now the temperature gauge also not bouncing. That's a great fix, and it's so nice having dependable gauges that are actually accurate, so that way I'm not worried about my car overheating. Let's catch a freeway now. Continue to show you. Great temp, great gauges, working perfectly. All right, thanks for watching along. I hope this was helpful. I think just to kind of sum things up, first thing before you start working on the car, I would recommend disconnecting the battery, so that way you don't have any issues. I did have, at one point when I was working on the car, I did not disconnect the battery, and I did burn out a fuse, and that's easily changed in the fuse box, so that's not a problem. But I would recommend disconnecting the battery first. Next is, I would go to the easiest thing first. The easiest thing for me was coming down to this temperature thermostat, the sensor here. So this sensor was really loose and it was really corroded. So I would go ahead and just clean this thing out, make sure it's tight, clamp it down, and then push it in. Now that it's got a good connection, it's actually reading a whole lot better, and that needle is really not moving. That's the easiest thing you could do because you don't have to take the dash apart. Next, after that, I would go into the dash and start taking that apart, but you saw me do that, and so that was pretty easy. Just ground the wire and then clean out the connections on the big circle pin. So all of this should not really take that long. It took me forever. It took me days with Don's help to figure out the issue, but really it's just some connection issues that are going on with the car, and you just have to fix that. So add a ground, clean out the connections, clean out the corrosion, use some pipe cleaners, use some sandpaper, clean it all up, put it back together. Should work just fine. Hope this video was helpful, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.